Who are they? Ah! In a world on the edge of the galaxy, one man.
Let's not gender it.
All right, you don't have to gender it because we're going to be playing an awesome board game, The Deadeye.
The Deadeye.
Yes, like together. The Deadeye.
The Deadeye.
This is Zarnia for Games and Geekery, and we are zooming in on games. I am here with
Adhil Patel.
and I am John Keevy. We are reviewing today The Deadeye. Adhil, what is The Deadeye?
It's a solo card game, which is quite an interesting thing, but it's from a local games publisher called Pleasant Company Games.
And you had some involvement in that, right?
A little bit of involvement. I was on the development team to try and play test the game and try and fine tune it a little bit. It was a wonderful journey that went on for quite a long time, seeing lots of different iterations of the game.
And this game is, of course, about a much less wonderful journey. This is about a harrowing, terrifying journey on the surface of a distant, terrifying planet called The Deadeye.
Exactly. Kind of a post-apocalyptic, very Mad Maxian sort of environment.
Dead robots, not dead robots, living robots, horrifying things like that. Giant scorpions, trains made out of bullets. I don't really, lots of stuff.
Lots and lots of stuff. Things that are trying to kill you at every turn. And speaking of turns, the journey is you're trying to get out to the safe haven. So you're trying to drive out there in your rig, and there along the way you'll encounter, as you say, certain beings or certain robots, and some of those things you'll be able to overcome them, and then you use them for parts.
Okay.
So you might be able to use them to help you in getting further along your journey.
So this is a review. Let's start with some first impressions. Obviously, your first impression was many years ago when you first played it out. So I'm going to talk about my first impressions, which is, first of all, that it's also in 3D, which is just mind-blowing. Actually, it's a very cool aesthetic to put this on. All the cards pop up. It's very, very cool. So tell me about a little bit about how this unique aesthetic came about.
So it was inspired when Rob Van Zyl, who's the artist on the game, was thinking about his childhood, and
As he was raised on the road by a wild pack of bandits.
on a distant planet, exactly. And part of his inspiration was the old comic books where you would have these 3D glasses that you would wear. And I think a lot of people these days probably would not have had that kind of exposure, as kids. But it's just something that, from an artistic perspective, it's relatively easy to do, because you sort of will just move the images slightly apart, and you change the colors a little bit. So he found it was something that he could get into quite easily, but it's not something that you see all that often these days.
And he, in fact, did actually make a comic that comes with the game, which is a little prologue of how you ended up on this planet.
That's right.
It hangs in space, on the outer rim of the coal planets, at the very edge of the trade routes. The Deadeye. Yeah, so we have a little bit of this 3D comic about this crash landing.
Correct. So it starts with that crash landing, and then you're in the rig and you're trying to get to your safe haven, and along the way you're going to be trying to do a whole bunch of things. But we went through lots of different iterations of colors and lots of sort of artistic styles, and Rob has a very distinctive style. So people will recognize his style from Ancient Terrible Things, which was one of the most successful South African games.
Okay, great. And I hope we get to play that sometime as well.
That would be amazing.
All right, so aesthetic, let's talk about what's actually happening here in front of me. What's the general overview? How do you play this?
Well, it's pretty easy in terms of rules, so not a huge amount of rules overhead. You're essentially turning cards over from the deck, and you start with a preset deck of an even number of the heat cards and the juice cards. The heat cards are the bad ones, the juice cards are the good ones. When you turn over a card, so you'll see we've got set up here, you're facing the tunnel, and you will have an encounter that you choose to either push forward with or you evade. So when you evade, you would then move that card to the side, and only the symbol at the top would then count.
So how hard is this to pick up from the beginning, from your perspective?
This, I would say, is relatively light in terms of complexity of the game. So it's quite easy to get into. We only took a few minutes to teach, and it's only a few minutes to play, actually. So it's quite easy to get into. Relatively small footprint, so the box itself is small. It's just essentially a card game. So just a deck of cards, essentially.
Okay, great. And they use a lot of symbols. Actually, not that many symbols. There's like a very clear pictographic like language that goes with this game, which I found quite easy to identify. There are very clear symbols.
And having been part of the development team, it's interesting how much time and thought goes into each of those symbols. So very interesting to see how it's evolved over time, how those have changed to make them read more clearly and to be easier to pick up.
Okay, great.
So the game, as I said, it works relatively quickly, and if we just take you through what actually happens in the game, is you're going to face this encounter, you're going to see how many symbols are contributing to that particular encounter, and then you'll check whether it triggers. So if you have enough symbols of the particular type on the bad side, in this case we don't, then it would trigger. In this case, we then say, well, let's turn over another card. So we're going to turn over a card, hoping to get a juice so that we can succeed in this particular challenge. And then, what do you know? It's a juice.
We did not set that up. That's just pure chance. We were very lucky.
So that contributes to the juice side, and that means that we succeed in passing through the tunnel. And
Nice.
in this case, we've got one extra distance to the journey. And what that allows us to do then is the next thing that we're going to pass is going to be, we're going to try to get to this outpost. So this is something that starts in the chapter deck, which are cards that you're trying to fulfill so that you can get to the safe haven, right?
Okay, those are basically your project, your goals,
Your objectives,
your
yeah.
progress.
Correct.
How many chapters are there?
So there are 3 chapters that come in the box. We talked about earlier how the replayability comes from the fact that you've got a variety of these cards that you can add in, and you would be facing a different set of them every time.
Yeah, so linking up with the aesthetics is like the world building of this, you know, like he's obviously gone very much for, we've spoken about the Mad Max and that kind of style, but I think his characters have such great personality. You know, there is this vigilante robot, big chunky claws, that big eye. It's really, really good. And it really gives you a sense of of the world of the game and the playful but apocalyptic style.
Absolutely, and I think that the events also contribute to that. So you also get these event cards which contribute to the aesthetic and to the feel of the game, and you get this card which is the Tox card, which means that when you face it, you have to lose one of your strength, and remembering that you only have 5 strength in the game. So if either your strength or your hope runs out, your game is over.
That is always nice to have something that is a clear, sometimes the joy of like a roguelike game is the losing, is the frustration. So it is nice to have those like limits. Do you want to chat a little like more high level, you know, because you are the games guru, I am but a games casual, on a more sophisticated level. Tell me about this game.
So I think that part of what makes the game really interesting is the deck building element. The fact that it's so simple, there's only a handful of cards really, it's just sort of one deck, but the amount of complexity that we could get out of the game and the interesting decisions that you're having to make. So we've reduced the decision matrix, if you like, to just a couple of things. You look at a card, you decide whether you want to face it or not, and then keep moving through. But building up the complexity through things like the items, where you can, when you get them initially, they're not usable, but later on you can then interact with the other things that you've got there. It means that you can get into the game quite quickly, and then the rules complexity builds up a little bit as you play.
Okay, so it's got quite like a nice learning curve.
Exactly.
All right.
And then speaking of learning curve, when you get into chapters 2 and 3, it ramps up a little bit. So once you've passed the first chapter, you can then start to get a little bit more into some more difficult challenges.
All right, which is very nice for a game that is meant to be replayable by someone by themselves.
Correct, and that's why, you know, part of the 3D appeal was because you're the only person that's playing. You know, you're the only one that has to really have the glasses on, and you can get really deep into the game, and it really gets you engaged with what you're seeing and really installed into this world. One thing that we didn't talk about was that the board actually comes with two sides. So this side that we've been looking at the moment is the night side, and in fact there's a day side as well. So this gives you a whole different feel in terms of the landscape that we're looking at.
So, immersion. Do we feel like we are trapped in a toxic world that is slowly crumbling all around us? Actually, that got a little too real there. But playing the game, do we feel like that?
I think we do. The urgency comes through. The visuals really contribute to this post-apocalyptic feel. I think the mechanics help to make you really feel immersed in it, and that you're constantly trying to move forward. So it pushes you to feel like you're trying to get somewhere as well. And with the number, you know, most of the cards are unique. So the most you kind of feel like you're encountering different people along the way as well, and countryside and sort of landscape. So I would say, from an immersion perspective, absolutely, and I do feel the Mad Maxian vibe coming through.
I like that the faster you play it, the more intense it feels like that. Also, just because the cards that you actually play, some of them are played as events, so you feel like, oh, I'm going to face the vigilante robot, but sometimes when the vigilante robot, it's just used to contribute to the heat of the situation, which makes it fun. Also like the danger chevron, yellow and black, and the sickly kind of toxic grays of the world. And I like dying. And it's very frustrating to lose strength or to lose hope and to figure out how that plays out in, I guess, from a little bit of an RPG perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's multi-use cards, which I think a lot of board gamers are really intrigued by and enjoy. So sometimes it's just used for a symbol at the top, or sometimes it's used for the parts at the bottom. And as you said, sometimes they're an actual event. So I think it works really well. Thematically, it works. Your vigilante robot turns into a grip, or your bot turns into something that helps you in terms of a laser.
For scavenging and just surviving in this world. Sometimes you've got to take apart a murderous giant robot to get where you're going.
Yes, you do.
Anyway, that has been The Dead Eye, and that's been our review. Loved it. It's great. Fun. All right, and you know what else is fun? Hitting the like, share, and subscribe button. That way you get more awesome content. Please stay tuned for more. Thank you, Adhil.